Today we're chatting with Jeaniene Frost, who is the who's not a vampire herself. She's a New York Times bestseller and USA Today best-selling author. She confesses, though, even though she's not a vampire, to having pale skin, wearing a lot of black, and sleeping whenever possible. She also loves poetry and animals, but fears children and hates to cook. She is currently at work on her next paranormal novel, and we're testing her vampiric skills today because in Jeaniene's part of the world it's now 10 o'clock at night. So welcome, Jeaniene, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, I'm still awake.
That's good to see. Well, hopefully we'll be able to keep you awake with our questions. We'll try not to make them too challenging for you, and hopefully we'll learn something new about you or your novels during the session.
Well, right. I hope so, as long as, but I can't give spoilers, so, I'm happy to answer anybody's questions, but if it's how does the series end, won't be able to do that one.
Oh, that's okay. I'm sure we'll be able to tease some other nuggets of information out of you.
Could be.
Alrighty. Well, Alison, would you like to start off with one of your questions?
Okay. Now, from what I've seen on your blog, you've recently submitted Twice Tempted. So does that mean then that the Night Prince series is ending with that book, or can you tell us if it's ongoing?
It's funny because when I started Twice Tempted, I told readers that I still thought that Vlad's and Layla's series, the Night Prince series, would be 2 books. But it was I was probably only less than halfway through it when I realized I was not going to tell all the story I needed to tell within that novel. So it looks like it will be a trilogy. It will definitely end at number 3, though, because I know what I know what else is going to happen. And that will conclude their story arc, but it looks like it will be a trilogy. So I'm happy about that, and at the same time, kind of bewildered by my inability to write shorter, I guess.
That's okay. I'm sure we're all happy that there's going to be a trilogy out of them. Vlad is just an awesome character. Very intense. Yeah.
Thank you. He's fun to write. I originally was going to write the first Night Prince book, and then Cat and Bones #7, and then the second Night Prince book. But when I was done writing the first book, I still had so much of Vlad and Layla's story in my head that I felt like if I switched and wrote Cat and Bones, I'd be doing it rather half-heartedly, which I didn't want to do. So that's why there were 2 Night Prince books back to back. So in a way, Vlad wouldn't shut up.
Plus, I don't think he'd mind sort of overshadowing Bones every chance he gets it either.
That probably had something to do with it.
Well, as we were discussing in the pre-chat, there are unfortunately a couple of people who are unable to make the chat today, and one of those is Amy Brooker. So Alison's question actually answered one of hers, which is, will Twice Tempted finish Vlad's story? And no, it won't. We can expect a 3rd book. But something else that Amy was interested in was it always the plan to have Vlad's story as 2 books? And I guess the answer to that was yes, but he wouldn't shut up, as you said.
Yes, he apparently had more to tell me and wasn't going to let go quite so easily. So it's fun as an author for that. I really thought when I started it that I could fit their story into 2 books, but I'm happy that my publisher gives me the opportunity to where if I say I have more to tell on these 2 characters, and they say, okay, well, go ahead and do that. So I'm very pleased by that.
Do you often find that characters won't be quiet? Do you find that your books rather have such strong characters that you feel the need to continue?
Yes. When I originally started the Night Huntress series, I also only thought that would be 1 book. And, we're 6 books in, so that gives you an idea of how wrong I can be and also of how loud the characters can be in my head. And demanding.
Well, one of the things that I was interested in is that you often hear stories of how authors have gotten their ideas for these stories, and I was reading that the Night Huntress series came to you in a dream. How do you go from having a dream about 2 people arguing to a 6-book series?
Well, it's funny because basically when I woke up from that dream, and I've had vivid dreams since I was a child, from as far back as I can remember. And as a teenager, I would sometimes make little stories out of them, unfinished stories, because I'm lazy and I get easily distracted. And when I had the dream about Cat and Bones, it also happened right around the same time I was having my early midlife crisis of you're turning 30, you've wanted to write a book since you were 12, and you have never seriously attempted it. So I was having that kind of moment of truth, I guess you could say, about what I had been doing with my dream of finishing a book, which was nothing. And right about that time, I had the dream about Cat and Bones, the actual dream. And when I woke up, I knew that only that she was a half vampire, he was a vampire. He was furious with her for leaving him years before. He'd been looking for her that whole time, and she still loved him but didn't think their relationship could work. So basically, Halfway to the Grave came about because I wanted to answer the questions to myself of who were those people. Why did she leave him if she still loved him? Why did she still think that their relationship couldn't work? What type of person was he that he would look for her for so long? And half vampire and vampire, how did the 2 of them hook up anyway? So it was kind of answering the hows and the whys that ended up becoming my first novel, Halfway to the Grave. So I wrote it, I guess you could say, to appease my own curiosity and also to accomplish a goal I had set almost 2 decades before, which was, start a book and, more importantly, finish a book. So that was how that question of, what from a dream basically got answered.
Well, it's lovely to see that you have achieved one of your long-term goals, and quite successfully too.
It's funny because it's awesome and surreal, the success and support the books have had, and I still expect that to go away any day now because it just does not seem real. But at the same time, there was you can compare what I felt of finishing a book right up there with what I felt getting a phone call saying that book hit the New York Times. I mean, it was the realization of a dream to actually finish something, and that feeling is right up there with any of the other success milestones that I've had. So, that's, I guess, why I tell writers who are looking to be published, love writing. If you do, this will work out no matter what happens. If you don't have that joy and that thrill of writing and finishing a book and really, enjoying that, the success, even if it happens, which is awesome, it won't be the same. You have to love what you're doing as well, even on the bad days.
Well, that actually, Wendy, I believe you have a question around that.
I was wondering about your writing routines and what you actually do to try and help you get into the mood of writing when you really don't feel like it.
It depends, and some days you don't feel like it, and that's just laziness. And, like any other day you don't feel like going into work, it's, well, too bad, sit your butt in that chair and do your job. And, that's what gets you through those days. And like I said, and I'm sure everyone with a job, or, gosh, I'm sure, stay-at-home mothers can relate to not feeling like it, and too bad, you still have to do it anyway. So there's more than a fair amount of that. And some days it really is, though, where you need to step away to be, in the end, more productive. Because you can burn yourself out creatively, just like, a mother or an employee can burn themselves out as well. So you might then, I don't know, watch some TV to relax, read a book, go outside, walk around a park to rejuvenate that, spark, and that's what you need to do, time and schedule permitting, to get that mentality back in the game. And the trick is knowing the difference. If you're sitting in a chair when maybe you shouldn't be, or if you're outside wandering around a park when maybe you shouldn't be. And it's it's figuring out which is the best. That's the trick to it all. And I wish I could tell you there's an easy system and a 1, 2, 3, but if there is, I haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, well, you probably wouldn't need your writing career if you'd figured that out.
Yeah, I do have playlists though. One of the first things I do now before I start a book is I compile a list of songs. When through the course of writing the book and revising it, I will listen to that same group of songs, and it becomes almost like white noise in a way, because it can drown out some of the other distractions, just going around your house. And also, it's kind of like treating myself like Pavlov's dogs. When I hear those group of songs, I know it's time to write, and that's the only time I listen to them. And when I revise, I listen to them to kind of get back mentally in the same mood as well. So each book has its own certain section of songs, and then of course once I'm done with the book and done with revising, if I happen to hear that on the radio, the first thing I'll think of is, oh yeah, book X. So.
Oh, yeah. So you tend to, do you have a set time that you sit down in the chair each day and you leave? Or you're fairly flexible and you do let yourself be ruled by how you're feeling a little bit more? Or
it probably depends how close I am to deadline. I would say I get my most productive writing done anywhere between 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. In the morning, I tend to handle more of the business aspects of my job, and there are a lot of business aspects. You wake up and your inbox is full every day, and some things need immediate attention, and some things you push off, for the next few days. But then those next few days happen, and then you have to take care of that, and sometimes things just come up during the day that need immediate focus. So it depends, and I've generally tried to handle those things in the morning and then write. But the problem with that is once you get closer to deadline is if you've exhausted yourself on 5 hours of business issues and then you're supposed to be bright, sparkly, and creative, that can sometimes not work out as well. So the latter part of a deadline, I usually try and switch it and not even look at my inbox until I've written, X amount of words. Because otherwise you can get, there's just it just never stops. Just, I'm sure, like with any job that anyone has, there's always something coming in and happening. So you have to shut that off as well. So it kind of depends, though. But my husband would probably tell you that I don't mentally get on into serious new writing until about 1 p.m. Yeah. And then it can sometimes, if it's going well, last into the evening.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. I have a question from another young lady who unfortunately wasn't able to make the hangout today. Her name is Nikki Hooks, and her question I think is going to be a difficult one for you. So if you can, that would be great. But her question is, who is your favourite character and who is your least favourite character that you've written about? And she's not limited just to the Night Huntress, but to the Night Huntress world. So can you pick a favourite and a least favourite child?
A favourite child is whoever I'm writing at the time. I am so fickle. I cheat on all my characters. So since I'm revising Vlad and Layla's book right now, I would say they are my favorites. When I bounce back and forth, to Cat and Bones, because I've written other characters in between Cat and Bones before, then Cat and Bones are my favorites again. So it really is whoever I'm writing. Least favorite villain. There probably are, it's a toss-up between Gregor from Destined for an Early Grave, who basically is every domestic violence abuser rolled into one with an added issue of fangs. I hated his guts. And when he died at the end, I loved writing that scene. I wish I could have written it 3 times. So I hated him. And also the villain in One Grave at a Time, which was based on an actual historical figure, Heinrich Kramer. And he wrote a book called The Hammer of Witches that led or influenced, I mean, centuries of witch hunts where they, anywhere from tens of thousands to some estimates say it might have even been more than 100,000. People were murdered and burned at the stake and accused of witchcraft based on the most flimsy things. And just, it was a horrible, horrible manifesto, and mostly against women. And he was a horrible, horrible, horrible person. And I remember hearing about him from a History Channel show probably a decade ago, before I ever started writing a book. And when I was thinking of a villain for One Grave at a Time, he just popped into my head, as he's still around because he's a ghost, and he's still carrying on what he was doing in some ways an even more sadistic fashion. And I hated his guts. So.
Fantastic. Well, that wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. Alison, do you have another question for Jeaniene?
Yes. Okay. Well, one of the things that I love most, especially about the Cat and Bone series, is that you are able to balance having your supporting characters against Cat and Bones, but you're actually able to give the supporting characters their due as well. So, and I know you've been asked a lot about Ian and he's not ready, but are there plans for any of the others to possibly get a book as well, unless you've got other things on your plate with Vlad and Layla and Cat and Bones? And...
Well, I mean, my mind right now is centered on Vlad and Layla and Cat and Bones, because, both of their stories are winding down. So Vlad and Layla is obviously much shorter. Their story will end at 3, and I've written 2 books. Cat and Bones, I have 6 books out, and their story might end. I'm not 100% sure. It might end at 8. If I can fit it into 8 books, I will. If it takes 9, I have that option. But if I know exactly what I have left to tell of their story. If it fits into 8, it'll be done in 8. And I know some readers have said, no, but I'm not going to write a book. I'm not going to make up a story just to fill 9 books if I know what I have to tell in 8. So right now, that's where all of my mind is focused. I get so many questions about Ian. And I will say that, again, he isn't ready now, but I'm hopeful for him. And I've had people say, well, if you just don't have plot ideas, I will give you some. No, I do. In fact, if he ever gets to that point, I know exactly who he would be paired with, and I already have an idea of the plot and circumstances surrounding it. And some of that I've teased into previous stories, and I'm not going to say which, because then I'll just end up, answering a lot of blog questions later. But so it's not a case of me not having any ideas for Ian. It's a case of me feeling like he would be ready to be the protagonist in a novel, which he isn't now. He would just cheat on the heroine and, and probably, drain her bank account as well. That's where he is now. And I don't want to write about that. But again, I'm hopeful for him in the future. As far as other books after that, I don't know. I never even intended to write about Vlad. So it kind of depends which character pops into my mind and won't go away. So they're the ones those are the side characters that get the books. They show up in my head, and I can't stop imagining their story. And so to get it out of my head, I put it onto the page.
Quite a visual process for you then?
I guess not visual per se. I guess it's similar to reading. As far as, with reading, you're not dealing with visuals. You're dealing with your mind and how you perceive a story, and then you create visuals in your head off of that story. So it's a similar process to that. And I've joked before that the only difference between an author and a schizophrenic is a paycheck. So in my case, it's, you know, whatever whatever voices are really being pushy, try and make a little, you know, try and put them to good use.
At least you have an outlet.
Exactly.
Yeah. They have to earn their keep.
Well, that actually answered another one of Nikki Hooks's questions, which was, "Are you thinking about writing about Ian?" And yes, you are, but not just yet.
He needs more marinating.
Fair enough. Another question that Nikki had was, would you ever write a book from Bones's point of view after he's met Kat?
I've thought of it. The idea sounds fun, but at the same time, I don't know. And I'm not being coy. It's just, again, it would boil down to if all of a sudden I would start to think about Cat and Bones' story through his eyes and kind of, you know, I guess some people might say obsess about it, and then want to put it into book form, then yes. But another character might step up, and I would be more focused on their story as well. So it really all does depend. I mean, it takes kind of a pathological commitment to a story to put it into book form, because it takes several months, you know, at least for me it takes several months, and, you know, a lot of dedication to it. So if I'm not really excited about a story to where I can't stop thinking about it, I am too lazy of a person to take the time to write a book out of it. So it really depends on who is just demanding to be heard.
I actually do remember reading about your likes, and I was pleased to see that I'm not the only TV addict in the world. So what are you watching at the moment, or are you in the depths of a book and not able to watch anything?
I'm in revisions right now, which is a lot easier than new writing because it's easier to fix something than to create something. So I like revisions a lot more in some ways. They allow for more TV time. Right now I'm watching a series called Fringe. And yes, I'm getting caught up. I understand the new episodes of season 5 started tonight, but I'm still not quite done with season 4. So I'm getting caught up on that. And normally I never make any assumptions about writers because I know it miffs me when people make assumptions about me. But with Fringe, I have to wonder if those writers partake of the LSD that Walter does on the show, because I have never watched a show that has had more just out there plots and just, I mean, I'm in awe of everything they've done on that show. So maybe whatever they're taking, I need a little of.
Yeah, I look forward to the next season. Hopefully we won't be too far behind the US this time.
Well, you're ahead on Merlin. I envy all the people overseas. You get to see Merlin several months before I do. So.
We have another question from a lady who was unable to attend. Her name is Kay Hodgson. And she wanted to know why you know so much British slang. Kay is actually from the UK, so hence the interest.
Well, first, my apologies, because I know I have gotten some of the British slang wrong. And so I apologize, and I blame my my Yankness on that. I like British shows, and like I said, Merlin, you know, which is, well, it is a British show, but although they I guess it's not quite as much of the accent as you get as some of the other ones. I love this TV series Sherlock. I loved the redoing Jekyll that the BBC did. Copper, Whitechapel, The Fades. There's a lot of British shows that I really enjoy, and so you pick up some things there, and also British movies. You know, gosh. Snatch.
Well, it's nice to see you getting your education from television.
Yeah, I mean, I've literally been known to grab a notepad and jot down slang while watching some of those shows. And so some of that shows up in the books as far as that. There was also a site, I think it was called Colloquialisms from the UK. It was a website, and it has from A to Z all of these just British slang, and and what was the most hilarious behind it is the definitions that they would give, and when they would use it in a sentence, and some of them are really risque, so I can't repeat them, but you know, and some of them are just sound risque but aren't. Like, I think the phrase "dicky fit." Like, if you say that in the U.S., it's going to conjure up an entirely different definition. But apparently in the U.K., it just means someone, you know, being a bit argumentative or overly upset about something. But they would use it as a sentence, like, you know, Fred was out late drinking, and when he got home, his wife had a dicky fit. So I loved that sort of stuff. So I mean, it must have been days going through that site, reading all the different bits of slangs and definitions, and pulling some of my favorites from it for the books.
Fantastic. Wendy, did you have a question for Jeaniene?
Oh, so many questions. When we were actually talking before about the TVs and so forth, a conversation Cindy and I had was about which of your characters or your stories would you like to see turned into TV or film? Do you have one in mind that you would like to head in that direction?
If Hollywood came calling, they could do whatever they wanted with any of the books. You know, there wouldn't be. I mean, obviously, it would be incredibly flattering if anyone wanted to produce a TV show or a movie out of the books, and you know, and I really wouldn't care which one. I love all the books. I wrote them. You know, again, if I didn't love the story, then I wouldn't have taken the effort to put it into a book. So, if any of them ever made it to a screen, I would think that was just really awesome. I have some people that say, well, then why don't you do it? And the answer is, I am not rich or connected. And, you know, so that's why I don't do it myself. That's why authors don't do it themselves. You know, if it happens to an author, it happens because, you know, a producer, film or TV or network, whatever, you know, expresses interest and goes to that author. We don't have control over it. It's not something that we can arbitrarily decide, or I'm sure that the airwaves would be flooded, because probably most authors would think that would be kind of neat.
Oh, I dare say. and as you said, you probably don't get much control over it, but if you were allowed to just pretend that you had control for a while, would you have a favourite actor, actress that you would like to see in your stories?
Oh gosh. It would depend, because it's funny. You know, people have said, well, who was Bones inspired by? And you know, you have to realize I wrote him almost 10 years ago. Mm. So, you know, the people who I thought kind of were inspiring 10 years ago, age, gravity, and weight gain happens to all of us. Some of them don't look the same. So, and there could be really hot actors out there that I just haven't come across that might personify the characters now in a much different way. So, I don't really have. I don't have anyone I could point to right now and say, okay, this is that character, and this is him, or this is her. And even if I did, I could see something tomorrow and they'd be like, no, it was that person. So I'm very up in the air.
I've seen
and I think looks would almost be secondary to personality, because you can have someone pretty, but if they don't give off the intensity that the male or female characters have, I think it would look kind of, I don't think it would work.
I've seen it suggested that Jude Law would make a good Bones.
He's got nice cheekbones.
Alrighty. We might just see if there's anyone who has a final question for you, Jeaniene, and then we might thank you. So, Alison, do you have any other questions for Jeaniene?
Yeah, I'm just trying to narrow down which one will be the final. Okay. I was thinking of asking whether or not you have a favourite scene from your books, but I've got a feeling that's probably going to be whatever you're writing at the time.
Picked up on that, did you?
Yeah. Okay. Actually, what I really want to know is, will Don find a resolution to the power struggles in his team? And I'm trying not to spoil anything there.
Do you mean Madigan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I can say that Madigan, who is a character that was introduced in One Grave at a Time, the Six Cat and Bones book, and who has made himself a real nuisance to Cat and Bones' former team, or Cat's former team, it wasn't Bones's. His motivations, where he's going with it, why he and Don have such a hostile past, and how it will affect all the characters will be very pivotal in the final books of the series. So I can't answer your question exactly, but I can say it's a good question because I want people to be wondering this, because that's definitely going to be a large part of the ending of the series. So so it's a non-answer, but I hope it gives you some idea.
Thanks, that was a nice evil answer there.
Well, you wouldn't want me to just tell you.
That would be too easy.
It's funny though, because it was only a couple years ago that it was about 2 years. Where I guess, you know what? It might have. Maybe it was 3 years ago. Gosh, time flies. That I finally told my editor how the series was going to end. And I figured I maybe should run it by her, in case she said, "Wow, that's really awful. You need to rethink that." So, so thankfully, she liked the idea, and I've been dropping kind of larger breadcrumbs now in the other books, and it's all leading toward a resolution, and I hope they enjoy it, because I've been looking forward to it. I've been waiting to tell the end of this story for years, so I'm excited to do it.
Fantastic. I have a final question for you, and hopefully it won't be too controversial. I don't think it will be.
No politics.
No politics. No, I was reading that you form your books around your characters, so you have these voices in your head that are very strong. So if the plot forms around the characters, do you have like a notebook that you carry everywhere with you and write down character traits?
Oh, here we go. So keep it by my desk. It's got mostly stuff written on it, but it doesn't contain character sketches or character boards or anything really organized like that. Instead, it contains half coherent sentences of when I get an idea about a plot, and I jot it down, or if there's something, a particular character's trait strikes me while I write, and I'll jot it down. But most of the stuff about my characters is in my head, and I just go over it over and over and over again mentally. Someone told me before I started writing that, if you want to write a book, you have to create storyboards, and you have to write down all the details about your characters on the storyboard first, and then you have to get sticky notes, and you have to write down all the details about your plot, and then you have to, write a timeline of the chronological order and time and how many days and everything that's going to take place. And I thought, oh crap, I am never going to write a book. I can't do that. And it kind of scared me off writing for several months. In addition to the way long time before that it scared me off. And then one day I just sat down and thought, you know what, I'm just going to write this. Doesn't matter, it won't be published anyways. I'm just going to accomplish my goal. And it was only afterward that I realized that writing is not a one-size-fits-all process. Some people do their best work with character boards and storyboards and sticky notes for plots and chronological timelines, and that is how they produce their best work. I can't do that. I wouldn't write one book if I had to do that. I produce my best work by rolling everything over and over and over and over and over in my mind. And I jot things down because, you know, I can be at sometimes forgetful. But when it comes to characters, if I'm not thinking about them a lot, then I'm just not interested enough to write about them. So there was one time that I wrote this really long, detailed, I mean, looked pretty outline and had character details. And after I was done with that, I didn't write the book because I already knew everything that was going to happen. I was bored. I was done. That book will never be written. So,
fair enough.
So my thought on that is, if it works to write it out that way, then that's the way you should write it. And if it doesn't work, then don't, because only the results matter.
And as you say, creative process, it isn't a one-size-fits-all, is it?
Not in my opinion.
Excellent. Wendy, do you have a final question for Jeaniene?
Yeah, well, Jeaniene, you just mentioned that, you know, it can be a long time between when you tell your editor what the end of the series is going to be. So do you ever change your mind?
I wouldn't say change my mind. I mean, I've known for a long time. Like I said, I've had Cat and Bones in my head for over 9 years now. And I've known for probably a good 7 years, if not 8, how their story was going to wrap up. I will say that sometimes I will see something either in a book or on a TV show or in film that resembles what I want to do, and it will freak me out because then I'll think, oh great, now everyone's going to say, oh, I just copied X. And so then I'll wonder, okay, are there little ways I can change it, maybe, you know, to not look like I'm doing the same thing someone else is doing. And I have done that before, like with Kat. She develops the ability to siphon powers, essentially. And originally, my intention was to have those powers that she siphons be permanent. And then I read another author's book where her character had the same ability I wanted Kat to have, and I said, oh, great. And you know, again, didn't want to hear the rip-off comment that I hear anyway, because there's so many similarities in the genre that people just automatically assume that, well, if this is similar and that's similar, then you must have taken it. And it's just, no, it's just similar, you know, there's nothing new under the sun. But I wanted to change something, so with that I changed it to where Kat's abilities that she siphons are temporary. It ended up really working out better for the plot and the story. But that was an example, I guess you could say, of changing my mind. It wasn't about it wasn't about the main thing where she siphons abilities, but it had to do with, you know, what happened afterward. So because a certain piece of media, and again, I don't want to specify film, TV, or movie, came out that was really close to what I'm doing to the ends of Cat and Bones, it upset me for like 3 months. You can ask all my friends and my editor, because I called and said, ah! But it's still in my mind is the way that their series is supposed to end. So actually, I'm not going to change that. And there will probably be some people who point and say, wow, it's similar to such and such. And I will just have to shrug and say, yes, but it's still the way in my mind it was always supposed to end. And such did something similar. And gosh, and I'm sure someone else will too at some point. And you just, sometimes you change it. And sometimes if that's the way the story should be told, you tell it that way. And you brace yourself, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Jeaniene. It's been a fantastic hangout with you, and I'm sure we could keep going for a long time on with more and more questions. You're very forthcoming, even though you won't give us any spoilers. You have given us a lot of other information, so thank you so much. It has been a real delight, and again, thank you, and especially for staying up this late.
Oh, no, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And it's great to get to chat with people, also who are outside my country as well, because you still have to I still have to pinch myself sometimes and realize that not only is anyone reading my books, but sometimes people from really far away. So this is cool for me, and I really appreciate you taking the time to have me on. And I appreciate, you taking the time also, to Allison, to come and hang out with us as well.
Yes, thank you, Alison. Alison's actually a bit under the weather at the moment, so we greatly appreciate her joining us. So thank you, and thank you, Wendy. And for those of you who were unable to attend, I hope that I have asked your questions, and if I didn't, I hope they were answered through other questions. So, and thank you for joining us. So we'll catch up with you again another day, Jeaniene.
All right, thank you so much.